Hey guys, and welcome back to the Days End Podcast. Today we're joined by Makoto Kern, founder of Impact, a top software development agency ranked number 119 on the Inc. 5000 list. Impact is known for helping companies streamline their software development processes and create cutting-edge digital products. Makoto, thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
Oh, we are too. I think I am personally maybe biased for this episode because I've got some experience in terms of dealing with development agencies. Of course, this was abroad. They were a foreign company, but I've got some questions just a little further down in the podcast that we'll open up and just excited to have you here and to get your expertise on Impact and kind of how it started. And I want to start there if you don't mind. If you don't mind giving the listeners a sneak peek into what got you started in development and design.
Definitely, for sure. I started my journey as a electrical engineer, robotics engineer out of college. Did that for did that for about 10 years. I've always been interested in entrepreneurship, and I did it all, from MLMs to real estate to mortgages to whatever as a side hustle, to while I was trying to figure out, okay, I don't want to be an engineer for the rest of my life, but I want to do something. And so what was interesting, I started getting into web design, SEO, and just started doing that for just friends. And after work or during work, sometimes, I'm not going to say that, hopefully my boss isn't listening from back then, but I mean, back then, I'm sure you remember Craigslist. I used to go and look at Craigslist for ads and seeing people are looking for website design or anything. And every morning I'd scroll through that before work. During lunch, I'd make phone calls. After work, this is when I was living in Chicago, so my traffic drive time was always like at least an hour. So I'd used to just do that all day long and with phone calls through, back and forth with the traffic. And so, my job as an engineer towards the latter kind of end of that career, I was doing a lot with a dental engineering company, and a company called Danaher bought them out. One of the top companies to teach you how to do lean manufacturing. And so before, that's a big term now, how to do lean, Kanban, all that. But back then I learned how to actually do that on a manufacturing floor. And my expertise was really software automation and having people who aren't engineers, who are on the factory floor, who are generally not, college level graduates, but they're working and creating widgets, 1,000 at a time. So if they have the software and they don't know or don't see something, all of a sudden you just shipped 1,000 widgets incorrectly. So I had to really refine the software to make sure it actually works. So that's almost basically, I'm trying to figure out the best user experience. And so, websites was a natural progression. And a lot of, I think, people back then, and designers, that's usually your first foray into websites or design. And so I remember that my first big client where I'm like, okay, this is not just a side job. This is something big. There's actually, I don't know if you know a company called Turtle Wax who makes the oils. Well, they have a little side project called Mystery Marvel Oil.
Okay.
The marketing director at the time actually posted something on Craigslist. I had no idea it was him. He just said, hey, I have this idea for, a product that we can market and we want a kind of cool website. And so I basically talked to him, understood the requirements. Basically, they wanted this kind of cool kind of like e-commerce site where they can sell their product. So I came up with this idea where we'd build this. It was back when Flash was popular. And we built this 3D garage where you could go in, there's cars coming in and out. You can click on where you see the little product and pop up and show something and you can go buy it. It was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
They had that thing up for probably like 7-8 years, but it was probably like a $20,000 job. I was like, wow, it wasn't like $1,000 job or $500 website job, but it was something major. And, I hired a Flash developer. And it was just me and him, and we really figured this out, and they loved it. And I was like, okay, this is something. I've got something here. And so that was really cool. And then I got hired as a consultant for TrustWave, which is, they're like a cybersecurity company, and basically maybe like test and look at a dashboard made by developers and say, how can you improve on this? And I just, told them how I thought it would be better and improve the experience. And I said, great, you're hired. So I'm like, okay, I said goodbye to my engineering job. And as I was consulting, I was building up my team on the side. I mean, I was just doing more and more websites, just bigger websites, did SEO, learned how to do that. And really I knew I had to catch up a lot because being an engineer, I love learning. I love figuring things out. And so that kind of helps me, especially knowing, okay, I'm behind the 8-ball here. I need to learn really fast how to do everything that has to deal with UX. So on the job, I'm reading many, many articles, gaining certifications, getting my graduate certification, everything all on UX, human computer interaction. And then
any YouTube, anything like
back
YouTube?
Then, I mean, YouTube wasn't popular.
Okay.
So at the beginning of my career, yeah. So it was a lot of just reading books and doing it the old school way of learning and just, listening to people in the industry, really, swallowing the ego and understanding like, hey, I need to absorb as much as I can. And so
firm believer in that. Yeah.
Yeah, it really helped at the beginning of my career and just growing the company. And so just, by doing that, I think really got me kind of going into where we're at today. And so, I started off very small, maybe like 2-3 people. That was good enough for me to manage while I was consulting as well. And then basically over the past, I'd say about a decade, I moved out of Chicago, went to Austin, and lived in Austin. That's kind of where things really grew fast. I was in Austin. I looked at kind of what the agencies were in there. It's very early on, and there wasn't too many. There were some really good ones that I follow, but I started optimizing my site, started really getting out there and networking, and this is where I said, you know what, I want to focus on not the cool, fun, sexy stuff, but the enterprise software, because as an engineer, I love being in industries that are very complex, trying to figure what the process is. And just me being an engineer, when I was doing that, I hated not being able to talk to people and not being able to interact with people, and just being able to do this really got me excited. So, we actually have one of our clients, my very first client when I was in Austin for the past 10 years, and they're still our client to this day. And we're still doing work for them. They're in Houston, big energy software company, and we've done awesome work for them, and they've been great. So,
I was actually curious about that when I was doing a little bit of research on your company. I noticed that Austin was your corporate, but I know you're calling in from California at the moment.
I'm actually in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas, so, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I was kind of wondering where that disconnect in terms of you not being in Austin and what that background was. So that's interesting to hear that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Austin's, it's definitely, it's grown leaps and bounds. I mean, it's been crazy, the real estate market. I mean, it's just a house that we were renting is now selling, was selling for under $1 million. Now it's $3 million, and it's the same house. And I mean, it's unaffordable unless you've exited or whatever. And so it's, I still travel so much to Austin, Houston, and Dallas. I love Texas. So it's pretty much my second home. Vegas is great because it's a great kind of midway, and there's so many conferences here as well. And so I thought it would be a good kind of base that we've been trying out for the last couple of years, but we'll see where we end up.
So would you say that's second corporate then?
Yes.
Would be. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I really, I was close to getting basically casinos. You're in the casino business here. And so I was really close trying to get a casino business as one of our clients. Didn't work out, but this is where I see a lot of potential because, they're on a lot of legacy software, and just the user experience for casinos, it's definitely, there needs to be a lot of improvement there. So.
That's so interesting. And I don't want to speak for Michael, but that's really interesting because he kind of has, a similar story, especially in regards to how he got started in his current business and trajectory. And so I think I was curious on that. I was curious if my question for you was going to be, Was this something that you were attempting to, build an app and ran into a roadblock, and so you decided, hey, I think I could do this better, and maybe you had a foul taste from a prior experience? But it sounds like you, in a way, kind of stumbled upon it or stumbled into it as well, and it just it clicked, and you've run with it ever since.
For sure. I think, when everybody tells you, do something that you have a passion for, it's easier said than done, because I did that. I did engineering for 10 years. It was great as far as my curiosity passion, but owning my own business, I'm just never a person that loves authority. I like I can't play the political game in a company. It drives me crazy. And so I'm not a risk adverse person. I love taking risks. I love just going out and just trying to figure things out. And I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs have that same kind of blood where they want to do that. And so it's exciting to meet others that have that same drive, but you have a passion for what you do. So I love just reading and learning all the time about these things. I love being, on the ground and seeing the designs as well through my team.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that, like kind of what you're doing there, right? And so, especially from an enterprise software standpoint, where do you land across that spectrum? Are you doing more like tech enterprise, healthcare? Like, where do you fall on that scale?
So we've been probably in every single industry that you could think of, but what's interesting, I start off with robotics, electrical engineering, and we've been in that industry. In Austin, one of the biggest manufacturers of robotics, Yasukawa, we did a big project with them. We were with them for over almost 2 years, I think. And it was an industry that I've been wanting to get back into, and we were able to do that. But, I haven't been in it for so long, but just having that passion and drive and understanding what the users really want is really key. And so we've been involved lately with a lot of cybersecurity. That's been really big. Energy's always been our bread and butter over the last decade. So oil and gas primarily, but I've been wanting to really get into the other industries, renewables. But, with enterprise, I think we figured out kind of how enterprise works and what's important, especially from all aspects of it, from the business side all the way from the users to how they actually implement and launch products. So, we've done health, we've done e-commerce, we've done B2B, B2C, everything, restaurant tech, HR startups. I mean, you name it, we've probably done it. And so it's
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I'm cybersecurity, so I'm cybersecurity compliance.
Oh, okay.
And so so my story is I had a 10-year career in marketing, and I had a design agency back in, oh my gosh, 12, 13 years ago now. And so that's
cool.
as well. I started off as like a graphic designer,
Uh-huh.
and then you realize I sucked horribly at that. I was like, you know what? I love web design. Let's go for it. And so I had a few clients under my belt, built an agency with a buddy of mine, and I was able to sell it off as well. And then kind of had a 10-year career in marketing. Ended up in like the legal industry,
Mm-hmm.
doing some director marketing and cloud workouts outside of Dallas, and so which was really cool. And then in 2016 is when I switched over into tech, and that's when I really sunk my teeth into like cybersecurity, compliance, very much heavy Microsoft and some other avenues that way as well. So it's really cool to see what you're doing. And I own a company in cybersecurity as well called Gauge Technologies, and so we're primarily a Microsoft shop.
Okay.
And so Microsoft shops doing all that as well as federal security and compliance.
Oh, that's cool. A lot of threat detection.
Oh, threat detection, everything, and even the non-technical side.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the technical side of the implementation, turn the knobs, flip the switches,
Yep.
and then you have the non-technical side, which is very much, writing policy and building out system plans and things of that nature as well, where most organizations honestly just don't have the talent on board, don't have
Mm-hmm.
technical writers, or just going, I literally don't have the time for this. Like,
Yep.
it's one of those like thorns in every organization's side, and every organization has to deal with it. And it's like nobody likes audits.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
that's kind of where it is. So that's really cool that you're kind of like in that realm. When is robotics and the development side, like you have a super curious like mind, and I get that as well because I'm the same way. Were you like that as a kid as well?
Oh yeah, I used to take apart everything as a kid,
Yeah.
all the toys, and wouldn't know how to put it back together. I think my background I've never been great at math, so my math skills were always just average, but my
Yeah,
science scores and everything were always way
same.
above average. And my dad was a
Mm.
science teacher, so I'd always read his high school books, and I wanted to be an astronaut when I was younger. So I knew everything about like space. I would read the high school books when I was in grade school. Anything about space, I know it, but I was like, I don't know if I could be an astronaut.
Yes, pretty
Right?
far up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I was the same way. I used to play with kinetics
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Those.
vector sets,
Yep. I actually bought
and
an old one off of eBay just like a few years ago for my kids, and I was like, wow, this is cool.
awesome. Oh man, I used to love those things. I used to build all kinds of stuff, and yeah, no, oh man, those are like the days. They don't really have a lot like that nowadays, right?
Hmm.
Or they do, but they're like little kits.
Yep.
But
The Lego
they they
Mindstorms, things
they,
like
they
that. Yeah.
still kind of box you into that kit,
Hmm.
And I was always like, hey, just give me anything and everything that I can get my hands on, and then I want to build something that will never work in the real world, but
Yeah.
it's really cool to look at.
Oh yeah.
Man,
No, yeah,
I love that.
that's very fascinating. I think my mind is more geared towards obviously, and it's probably perfect that I'm in the podcasting industry now, just questioning pretty much everything. I've got a
Hmm.
history in safety, and so a tenure in safety, and so obviously the five whys and root cause analysis and that sort of
Yep.
thing. I need answers for anything and everything that I come across, and so it's really the trajectory of where impact is going, especially with your skill set. I'm curious, like what, and I know you kind of expounded on it just a little bit, but what were those early onset challenges that you saw shifting from going from robotics and engineering to tech and what you're in currently, and then going, okay, I want to start something of my own. And
Hmm.
then obviously you said you were building almost like a small team at the time. And so how did that develop, and what were some of those roadblocks that you saw on the early side?
Yeah. I think some of the biggest things, and when we work with clients, it's the design and the work itself is actually the easy part. It's dealing with the people and the personalities. And I know as when
Yeah.
you have a team, it's dealing with the people on your team, the personalities, and the people that you're working for. And so, I've always had the mantra of my team is number one and the client is number two.
Ooh.
Because if the team is treated well and they're smart and they take ownership, the client is event that they're just going to be treated very well. It's just natural. But if you
Yeah.
just let the client walk all over you, then the team is not going to stick around with you. And I have people on my team that has been with me for over 10 years. And so I think that's a testament to kind of
Absolutely.
that leadership way of how I run things. And I'm pretty,
Hmm.
I try to lead from behind versus try to lead from the front. Um, and so I think that's a very important thing. And I want to surround myself with people that are smarter and better than me at certain things. I have to make the decisive decisions,
Hmm.
but you have to have people that you trust around you, and you have to take that input. And I think it just has to do with being a UX designer. I have to be very empathetic. So I have to understand why certain people around me who I've appointed to be the leaders to tell me like, hey, this is not right, or this is wrong, or this is a good, or this is bad, or whatever. I have to listen to that and make my own decision. And so I think the challenges of growing too fast, especially in the early stages where I'm just like, oh, I just got to hire a bunch of people. I got to do this. I've got so many projects. That becomes a problem.
Hmm.
So I've switched my mantra to hire slow and fire fast. That's so important. And I see
Yeah.
that problem happening. I see that happening in corporate America the opposite way.
Yeah.
Um, and they definitely don't fire fast, and that is a detriment. One person can really wreck your organization, and
100%.
so I think that's so important to have the right people in place and make sure you do and you treat them right, and then everything else will kind of follow suit.
Vetting. Oh my
What is
goodness, I couldn't. Yeah.
yeah, what is your current head count?
So we were actually up to 50 people last year, but We've had to slowly cut because of certain projects, and that's just agency work where something happens. And this tech recession right now is taking a beating.
Yeah. How
So,
has your leadership style changed from a head count of 5 to a head count of 50?
mhm.
And what was that shift you had to make?
So I definitely had to hire more people to be leads.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I have to have really strong lieutenants that can
Mm.
manage the teams for me versus me being in the weeds of everything. That's key. And if you don't hire that first, then that's going to be a problem because you're just going to be micromanaging everything, and I hate micromanaging people. I want everybody to almost think of themselves as mini entrepreneurs, and
Yes.
you're leading your own team, your own project. So think of it that way, versus it's just a job.
I love the ownership principle, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you take ownership of something, then everything kind of lives and falls, but with the backup behind you, right?
Yep.
And I think organizations that do it really well, like Google does it really well, right? They have that entrepreneurship mindset where they're telling their employees, hey, like start businesses, do that. I think one of the biggest notable ones from there is I can't remember the guy's name, but he built lidar systems for Google that they needed for their
Mm-hmm.
autonomous car projects, and so he was seeing a major issue in the process of like getting lidar systems. Uh, one at a rate that Google needed, right, for testing, but also just in general as a whole, because this was kind of like the trajectory that autonomous cars were going on. Lidar detection systems were just coming up,
Mm-hmm.
and so he built I think it was like a $200 million business inside of Google, and then sold his business to Google for
Wow.
650 million, and then left for Uber.
Oh, wow.
Oh, did he get in
Wow.
trouble for selling some of the, or
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know. I think he got in trouble for selling it to Uber and then like proprietary systems. Like something
Yeah,
happened there, but I'm
I
like,
think I remember
at
that
that point,
story.
he was like, I can fight it.
Yeah.
I'm I'm curious because I'm going to throw in a personal experience because,
Ooh.
like I said, a colleague of mine, we're working on an app, and so from a consumer uh, perspective in the
Mhm.
whole development process, which you're doing more enterprise, this was more of like a connection social app, right? But even still,
I've
we
built
know
a
it's one of
social
our
app for
challenges.
somebody before, so I know the challenges.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, being that we've never been in this market before or
Mhm.
industry before, we did the whole front end ourselves. We designed the whole thing ourselves. So when we came and we found that developer, uh, we really just need the back end. We need to build this thing. And maybe I'm saying that in reverse. I'm not too sure.
Mhm.
But so one of the challenges that we faced was we sought abroad, obviously a cheaper price. And I'm not going to knock the development team. They were doing it as I think as best as what they had resources for. But I think one of the disconnect that we had, and I'm kind of tying this into something you were talking about too, was communication. You were talking about your team being first, and then the client being second. Some of the things obstacles that you guys have to, or hoops you guys have to jump through to try to make a client happy. From my perspective, one of those things was I felt like the development company wasn't seeing our product as its own, right? They didn't give us insight into what market value it might have, uh, how far it could go on the marketplace and that sort of thing. So as they were designing it or implementing our designs and developing this thing, it was just more from a basis of uh, you paid me X amount of dollars. I'm going to code up to what I feel like I have the knowledge to do. And then they give it to us, and it just wasn't what we were hoping that they were going to provide. We were hoping they were going to grab it, see its potential, and then run with it. From your perspective on the other side of that, because I can all day long go, oh, this is really frustrating, and run my head into a wall.
Yeah.
From my perspective as a consumer, as a client, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that in terms of some of the challenges that you face with clients that might have certain expectations.
So I've got a lot to say about that because we have been fixing problems done by cheap offshore teams for years, and
Okay.
even onshore teams. And so dev is always one of the hardest things for CEOs to realize, because they're usually not that technical, so they believe whatever their head of development or CTO says. Their CFO looks at the bottom line. They don't look at value. They don't look at output. And so when we go into an organization and we see the house of cards that I call, or the tech debt that is there, it is astounding the level of disconnect that people have when it comes to like, oh, this team costs $5 an hour. This team costs $50 an hour. Let's just go with the $5 an hour team. Yeah. And there's fundamental problems with, there are, if I'm trying to gather my thoughts here, there are fundamental problems with when people know their worth, they're going to charge for what they're worth. And if they're too cheap, you're going to have problems. Either you're going to pay now or pay later. Paying later is going to be far worse because you're going to have opportunity costs that are lost. Why do you think most startups fail? Because they look at the bottom line first versus the value that the teams are going to bring. So your initial hires, especially an app that is going to have to compete against the millions of other apps that are out there, you have to go at it pretty strong. And if you build something that isn't scalable, and if you start to, we may get into an organization where we're not doing the dev, but we do design. And if we make designs and all of a sudden they can't do the designs because something breaks if they start changing things, then now we're hindered. Then the innovation is hindered. And it just continues down that path. Or they do something, QA is not there, they're not checking things, and the design that they implement does not look like anything that we told them to do. Now everybody else downline has to fix that very cheap $5 an hour person's job, and then all these other expensive resources now have to take time and fix things and really make things work. And so that lens, that leadership that I've seen in corporations where they don't see the full impact of problems when you do this type of decision making, when you're bringing in teams. That's like, I always say, if you have to build a bridge across a river, and you're going to drive your family over that bridge, do you have the A team build that bridge, or you're going to have the B team build that bridge?
Yeah.
And you want that A team to build that bridge. Yeah, you might be able to have some B team people come in and tighten the screws, paint the bridge, but you do not want that A team building that bridge to begin with, because your whole company's riding on that product. And so that's always been the biggest challenge when it comes to design. I mean, this is my bread and butter, and I can immediately tell very quickly from process to whoever's there how good their design process is and where they can take it. But when it comes to dev, a lot of that can be hidden, or it's usually kind of kept very close. The cards are kept very close by the dev teams, and they don't want to say what the problems are. They're afraid to tell you what the problems are because they're afraid that that's going to hinder whatever it is. Sometimes the motivation is incorrect, where they said, oh, get as many backlog tickets done, versus the quality. They want quantity. So they're just spitting out features as fast as possible. And so, these are a lot of the challenges that I see. And it's almost, I hate to say, it's like the Amazonification of physical products, how they're cheap now. They break within 3 months. I think you're going to see that with software, where things are going to just start breaking more and more, and you're not going to see the innovation anymore. And that's going to be a big problem.
That was actually what I was going to ask you too, is it's almost like being a tattoo artist when somebody comes in and they want it covered up, and a lot of tattoo artists kind of get offended by that because they're like, well, I don't want to cover that up. I want to do my own original art. Is there a separation between somebody coming in and needing your help and you being as motivated to help, and not to put you guys in a bad light or anything, like you don't like to help people, but is there like a difference between somebody coming to you with a fresh idea versus somebody coming to you and you going, I just went down the road for the last 18 months and can you help me fix this?
So I prefer working with somebody who, I always call it the little kid touching the hot pot. Until they, if you tell them don't touch hot pot, you tell them all these things to avoid, people will still touch that hot pot and just burn themselves and say, shit, 18 months ago, if I would have listened to you, I would have done it better. But they decided to go that route. So it's easier to persuade the person who has burned their hand, who has figured out, like, drop the ego and figure out, you know what, we don't know how to do this right. So let you figure it out. So that's always an easier sell. The hardest sell is the person that is trying to do it new and doesn't know, because everybody commoditizes design or development, and that's the problem. They don't see the value in bringing in. It's like the whole thing about the engineer that charges $10,000 to fix a part and he does it in 2 minutes and charges $2 for the tool and then $9,000 whatever for the 20 years experience. It's the same thing. I mean, we could get into an organization and rapidly determine what the problems are, make sure they don't pull the risk levers that they normally would do by just kind of like Peter principling their way through things. And if you're familiar with that term.
I'm not personally. But
it's basically you're promoted to the point of incompetence.
Yeah, okay. I know there's a wide variety of scenarios that you guys probably deal with on a regular basis, but would you be able to like give us like a brief like rundown into like especially for impact and how you guys the process and if it's proprietary that's okay, but we won't have to talk about it, but like what is that from how does impact come in and change a company?
For sure. There's two ways we could come in. We could either come in from the bottom up where we make a change, or from the top down. I prefer from the top down. So we could come in either way. Always from the bottom up always has their problems where we're just doing wireframes or designs and we're just looked as just creating assets, and there's no strategy, there's no decision. It's hard to get to the decision makers as to why. And so when we come in from the top down, so when I know the CEO or CTO or CPO, whoever in charge of like really making sure the product succeeds, we have something that I don't want to call a workshop, almost call it a sprint shop, where we do a sprint kind of workshop where we actually immerse ourselves and our team really quickly with the top heads, usually a C-suite, maybe VP levels, to understand what the business goals, pain points are, understand what the customers, what their pain points, what they're trying to do, their journey, and then from there we try to understand what are the features that you're trying to build, and from there we basically create a roadmap for the team for the next 12 to 18 months to say, this is your MVP. These are the high risk items. These are the low risk table stakes items. These are things that we know. Let's go ahead and just start building this or just start wireframing. These are things we're not sure of. These are things that we have to actually do some discovery, get into design sprints, really like get some user feedback, because if we build it, it's going to cost us a lot of resource time and money. So let's really test it out first. If it's not right, then we'll spend the least amount of money. And so we put these things into like a quadrant and really help them prioritize and get to market faster. And the biggest thing about that is that in one of the chief product officers that we worked with, who worked with us really quickly at one company and then brought us into another company, he was always skeptical. He's like, oh, that's some feel good bullshit that you guys do for a workshop to charge us more money. I'm like, no. Let us do it and you'll see what the outcome is. And he says, oh, I see now. He's like, your designers now know what questions to ask, because it all ties up to what the business is trying to do, the constraints of the dev teams. What are the priorities of this MVP versus just trying to like boil the ocean and everybody giving different kind of feedback, because that traditional way will take months as you're asking every single person, them giving you feedback, then it's different from somebody else's and you're just spinning your wheels. We're able to ask the right questions and get to the solution much faster, and everybody's aligned, and we can always refer back to that. And that's been, this process of doing that first has been so, it just changes once clients see that happen. And then when we develop a product, the success is almost immediate. And so that's been really great. And, when you give them price wise and things like that, we're not talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do workshops. People can charge that. We probably should. But I really want to get in the door and say, hey, this is the right way to do it. And we have to put you on the spot. It has to be collaborative, because a lot of CEOs just say, hey, just set it and forget it. I don't want to even deal with you guys. Just show me an end product. But it's like, no, you're the leader. You have to make a decision in the room in front of everybody as we're making that decision. And so everybody knows that we're all aligned. And you can quickly see where there's misalignment and where people say, oh, we know what we know. We don't need to do that stuff. That's another big one. And you know right away that's a problem. And so when everything is physically on paper or virtually on a mural whiteboard or whatever, our workshop at the end of like 3 or 4 days, we have the whole rooms covered with stickies, with everything about what everybody's decision was made and where we're going, what the prototype may look like, things like that. It's amazing. And that attributes a lot to our recent successes and our clients.
Oh, man. I love your website. I've been bragging on your website for probably the last week or so. It's just immaculately put together. And I love that illustration of you guys writing on the whiteboard. And I know for a fact now at this point, that was one of the things that we were missing. And I think we were hungry for that we didn't really, of course, early days of even, I didn't even know where to start with the development team. I found myself on Upwork, and freelancing, trying to figure out what the best bet was. And of course, now having Michael on with TDEP and he even shared some information. He's like, I probably would have went this route, and it sounds more aligned with kind of what you guys offer. So that's and of course you hit a roadblock. We did, and things fell short. We still have the project, but it's all really fascinating information, because I think that's for sure what we were hoping to obtain was some level of integration with that team, so the communication was effortless. Yeah. And they were thinking of it the same way we were thinking, especially if and I'm sure you guys consider that too. I don't know if you guys are pretty picky, but if it's going to have your name on it at the end of the day, you kind of want it to be a good product, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. It's, we have to put our money where our mouth is, but at the same time, design is iterative. So it's not like you hire us and that's it. Okay, we're done with the one design, because always, when it gets to development, there are things that come up, or maybe something else comes up from a business side where, hey, we need to do this instead, or whatever the case is. It's never goes smoothly. And, we've seen pitches from other organizations where it's like, hey, we'll go away for 3 months, work in our black box and deliver something. And then there you go. You just hand it off. That doesn't work. We've seen it time and time again, and it gets you to a solution maybe quicker, because you're not really getting a lot of collaboration. Maybe you are somewhat, but it's really relying on that team to just say, hey, they maybe if they've done it before, build me an e-commerce site that is like Amazon. Okay, sure, that's easy. But if you're building something like a new cybersecurity thing that detects whatever and then does X, Y, and Z, it's much more difficult. So this is why I really love the fact that we're in this kind of space, this enterprise space versus the B2C. But again, I love B2C as well, because I take a lot of the learnings from one of our clients is a big energy client in Texas. And, one of the jobs that I have to do is increase conversions. And so it's really important to know, just a change of the button name can increase your conversions. That little simple thing. And so because they've got 50 other competitors, there's 50 other, organizations out there that will provide the same thing. So you really have to be aware of why the user is doing something. And so even though with enterprise, it's not as reliant on that one-time visit and that's it, they'll go somewhere else. Where enterprise, usually they have to use it, but they have to use it for years or whatever. So you really have to understand the people that are there and try to really optimize their process. And they're not going to be happy that you're going to change your process with a new software. So you have to understand that there's a psychological change curve where people are not going to be readily accepting of that. But eventually, if you do it right, it should get easier and the learning curve should be faster.
Yeah.
So data talks, right? Business requirements and business goals and challenges are forever changing, right? And so the data drives design iteration.
Yep.
And you're saying it's extremely important to do that. I'm very curious, your thoughts on the buzzword of AI. But I want to go deeper, right? Because I know it on a deeper level as well. I'm not talking about consumerism of the AI. I'm talking more about the AI has been around for a very long time, right? A lot of companies have been using it for a very long time. how are you guys utilizing AI in its previous existence, and then now how are you using AI with the existence of AGIs?
Yep. Very good question. We have a podcast, and that we've been actually doing AI talks. I have an integration team that has been integrating actual AI into one of our enterprise clients' products, and so they're on the ground firsthand at doing this. So we've got some really good insights on that podcast. Just trying to plug it in, but
plug it in, please take a moment, please.
No, I mean, seriously, from the robotic side, yeah, I took my neural networks course. I did fuzzy logic. I did a robotics, a little 6-legged walking robot with programming and fuzzy logic. So I have some, some experience with actually programming AI.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, a lot of these, we have AI in our mattress, thing. And it's like, man, that's just fuzzy logic. What are you talking about? That's not going to tell me how to sleep better, or my feelings or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, with AI, we're definitely seeing two things. One is where the positive thing is definitely it's going to help with efficiencies. If you are able to understand and have experience of whatever you're trying to use it for and kind of sift through the bullshit that sometimes it produces, then you can leverage that. But if you're relying on that very heavily and you don't know what you're doing, that's where it could get a little messy. And legal law firms have that issue. Just when you're creating content, I mean that can also have, especially if it's like expertise or something complex. But also a lot of companies are just throwing AI in there. What they're doing, and it's a big mistake that we're seeing, is where they'll just put a ton of resources to try to integrate it. And I'm like, do clients really want this? Or what you can actually implement within the first year after putting millions of dollars, taking your teams off of features that your clients actually or your customers actually want and putting on AI thinking that this is what they want. Is that right? And so, the whole process of what I was talking about of us just like immersing ourselves and understanding where that is, we're actually coming up with our own kind of sprint workshop as well, where are you thinking of integrating AI and how would you do that? And does it make sense? Does your user want it? And what does that cost? And what are our priorities of integrating that? Because you're going to take a lot of resources away to just integrate that thing. And is it worth it? And so I think companies have to be really wary just by saying you have AI in your system. What is that? Just a chat GPT wrapper that you're throwing in there? I mean, that's great if you do it, but I don't know. I mean, why don't clients just use, ChatGPT for your thing? But if it's something that's where it's helping with, other things of gathering the knowledge, trying to understand the knowledge, then it's different. But it's from a design standpoint, we're seeing with tools, it's definitely helping with efficiency of tools, efficiency of like getting things that takes longer time to gather. So I think there's definitely improvements there. But I think people who should be worried are the ones that are maybe below average in their expertise. If you're below average, you're not really good at what you do, I think you might have to be worried about AI. But if you're somebody who's above average and you're really trying and you're leveraging that, you're going to accelerate even faster with your 100%. Output.
So you think it's kind of like a fancy word in a way to kind of toss around sometimes, especially from
it's like the dot-com boom. Everybody had a website, and everybody who had a website was multi-millionaire, billionaire, creating the next best thing. But where's Netscape? How's Yahoo doing? It's there's only a few people that come out, or a few companies that come out of it at the end. So I think
agreed.
There's definitely a lot of hype, and it's a big bubble, and there's going to be, the winners and losers that come out of this. So just trying to figure out where do we stand, but the detriment to the Peter Principle come to effect here, where the people who are making decisions on regular people's jobs that are out there are saying, oh, we're just going to do this. And then your bad decision may cost the company millions of dollars and now time wasted because you put everything towards a, ChatGPT, a chatbot.
Right. I see one more content creation AI chatbot.
Yeah.
I said chunking it out the window.
I know.
I'm like, okay, it's
Yeah.
ChatGPT with a new wrapper.
Yeah.
I think a personalized approach always makes the from a longevity perspective always makes the greatest impact, like you were talking about. There's probably going to be that shift of software that was on the cheaper end that breaks down and probably needs some form of refurbishing by like a company like yourself, just like Michael deals with compliance from a level where people either didn't realize that they weren't compliant or needed compliance, or they did and they just tucked it away, kind of like I come from the oil and gas industry. And so a lot of the individuals that I worked with were making a lot of money back between the 2005 boom and 2005 and 2015 oil boom, and nobody put it back for taxes, and they come collecting. And so I feel like it's interesting from a personal personalized perspective of what you guys do, really integrating yourself in with the customer. I'm curious, like how that's transitioned you guys onto being multi-featured on the Inc. 5000 list. I mean, we're just really fascinated about not only your position and that list in general, especially from the perspective of how vast the types of companies that are on there. And so for you guys being on that list and being in that spot of 119, what was that process like of even, did they seek you guys out? Was it something that you guys sought out yourself? I mean, what was that process like?
So it's, I've always been the type of person who hates, I guess, being recognized for things. I'd rather just do the work.
Okay. Yeah.
That's why podcasting was always hard. I'm like, man, I just want to do the work. I don't want to talk about it and kind of toot my own horn. Same with the awards. I said, somebody recognizes us, great, whatever. I just want to do the work and do a great job. And I think that will get recognized. But, from the ebb and flows of running an agency, there's always going to be where I have to always keep that pipeline filled. I have to let people know. If people don't know who you are, then it doesn't matter how good of work you do. So you might as well talk about it. You might as well try to seek things out so people can find you.
Absolutely.
So I think with the Inc. 5000, we've been at it for the last 3 years. So it's been great because that's something where, they check your tax records, everything, to make sure that, to see your growth, and it's year over year growth. And so we've been able to prove, we were at 260% up to 500% growth year over year. So it was massive for revenue. So it's been awesome to be recognized for that. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's I think, again, I don't know, maybe just being modest, and I love to just do the work and not talk too much bullshit about it.
Well, I guess a good question to ask from that is how much would you how do I put this the best way? How much of that would you contribute to you guys' approach specifically to, you guys, I wouldn't say you guys have reinvented the wheel, right? But you're doing something, like I said, from a personalized perspective of how you guys operate and how you guys treat contracts, how you guys treat clients, how you guys treat the overall goal. Like, do you feel like that was the attributing factor for the growth? Was that the common denominator for how exponentially fast you guys grew?
Yeah, I think
quality of work.
For the last several years, I've done basically zero marketing. It's all been referral-based growth. And I think that is a testament to the work that we do, the relationships that we've made. And I think that's really important when it comes to whoever you work with. I don't care if you're the lowest person on the totem pole to the CEO. We work with everybody, and we treat all our clients with, everybody says we treat them with great respect, but we do. And we have to work collaboratively. And when we go in there's always going to be two types of people when you go as a consultant to a company. One, they're accepting of you, or one, they get very defensive. And so you have to figure out who those people are and why they're being defensive. Why is it? Are they because they're incompetent? which is generally the case, or they just got, they're very defensive just as their personality. But once you get through that, then they open up. And so, we just try to treat everybody to say, hey, we're here to we want to see the company succeed. Because obviously new client acquisition is much harder than current client acquisition. So as we want to keep on, we don't price ourselves. I'm not a McKinsey, where mini McKinsey is always what, my team says, but we actually do not just the strategy, but that tactical execution of work as well. So because we're involved throughout the process, it's usually a longer life cycle. And then we develop those relationships with our clients because of that, which is great. It's a lot harder to deal with because you're in there longer. You definitely get people who get burnt out from my team. But I think we're always trying to be supportive all around, from our team to the clients, and they recognize that. I think the good leadership of our clients recognize the work that we do, especially if let's say they have a designer or a developer on staff, and then they see us and we're outputting 2 to 10x more than what they've seen at better quality. And when we go into a client call, I'm on those calls. I don't care if it's like a daily scrum call or whatever. I'm on those calls because I want to make sure if there's anything that they need, I'm there. And so it's great too, where there's a certain size company that I can grow to be able to still do that. So I've got to kind of watch it too, because if I do want to grow bigger, then I can't do that all the time. But I do try to make it important that I'm meeting with the CEOs and the C-suite at least, once or twice a week.
Yeah. Back in my management consulting days, it was always about becoming a partner and advisor, right? Being able to embed yourself to where they lean on you for those answers and questions, where you become that extension of a team to be able to collaborate in the way that you guys are. I think that's massively important, especially in today's enterprise landscape, where companies are holding super tight to the chest on a lot of this stuff, right? And being able to penetrate that, be that advisor, and being those boots on the ground for them, I think it's actually absolutely tremendous. And to be honest, it's extremely hard to do really well.
Yeah. It's, I don't want to get into private equity too much, but I think they've been somewhat decimating a lot of the small and medium-sized businesses because of it's interesting. I read a certain article on Medium about how they actually leverage and buy companies. I mean, they only have to put down 10%, and they're not liable if the company goes down. So guess what? The pre-buyout and the post-buyout, there's going to be layoffs.
Yep.
Pre-buyout, they try to make themselves look. The company tries to make themselves look as valuable as possible. So high value, high price people like consultants, just people who are really good at their jobs, they're gone. And post buyout, then even more people are gone, just because the profits are, funneled to the investors first. And it's scary because I'm seeing that happen quite a bit across the board. And some certain companies almost missed out on the AI boom because they were trying to do that. And we were able to stay in with some of our clients and say, hey, we can help you integrate actually AI. We have the expertise, and now they're flourishing because they realize that, because you can't just get some random offshore team to just integrate AI. I mean, that doesn't work. It's expensive, and you got to do it right. And so it's something that, I think is another subject for a podcast for private equity, but I think it's something that is telling in kind of the industry.
Yeah, I would love to just dive that deeper into another podcast,
because
all those guys, they were the talk of the party 4 years ago, but we'll go into another conversation that another day.
I love it. I'd love to discuss that because we've got a lot of stories on that one too.
Oh man, same. I've known a few people that have gone through VCs, and it's a completely different world, and some of the crap that they pull is absolutely hilarious that you would never think of going, that shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But, that's fantastic. And I do have a question for you, just from an AI perspective, kind of just more of a fun type of question. Who are you more bullish on? Are you bullish on, what is it, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, ChatGPT, Llama?
So that's an interesting question, because I have my my death by 1,000 cuts SaaS of everything subscription. So I'm like, should I cancel this one? Should I not?
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
it's like, I see it almost as the iPhone Android battle. Somebody comes out with the next iPhone, and then Android or Google tops them, and it just keeps on going up and up and up. So, I think the gap is slowly getting, the incremental increases are getting a little bit, less and less.
Yep.
So I think, testing them all. I test them all the time. Whatever question I put in ChatGPT, I put into Sonnet or whatever, and see how it is and see what the response is. Some do better than others, and so it's interesting to play around with that. I think with Microsoft, they always have a foothold because of Azure. So you got to use all their products. There's a incentive to use their products. Copilot, obviously, they're going to throw that into their products using Teams, everything. So they've got a smart way into everything because of that. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting arms race.
For me, I've been enjoying. I've been enjoying Gemini. I like how.
You a Pixel user?
What's that? No, I'm an iPhone user.
Oh, okay. I'm a
user.
Pixel guy. My whole family's iPhones, and they make fun of me all the time.
So it's funny enough. I'm about I looked at the Pixel. Was it the Pixel 9?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I think I might go grab one just to kind of like check it out, because I'm in the business now where I can't be hell bent on one area anymore, right? Like I have to kind of be agnostic. I don't want to be, but I have to be agnostic. And so I think for me, Gemini, I love one straight out the gate multimodal, right? One, which was awesome, right? They built it from the ground up to be multimodal. And second, the structure of the responses and the formatting of the responses, I think is one, way better than ChatGPT. 4.40 is getting there. Like they're formatting a little better. You still 100% know. If I get a response, I know it's ChatGPT. The structure is noticeable now.
Yeah.
But I've personally been enjoying Gemini, and funny enough, like Sonnet over Anthropic is built with Google technology, Google's backend. What is it called? Not TensorFlow. I can't remember which one it is, but it's their AI backend is what Sonnet is built off of for their LLM. So that's interesting, though. Yeah, I like Microsoft. I like Copilot. I think it has a lot of walls.
Yeah,
it is. There's a lot of walls in there, so you can't do a lot. But I think you're right. Like I think in the next couple of years, they'll all very much kind of be in line, and it'll be more of a preference than anything else.
It's funny because if one of us during our daily conversations between Michael and I, if one of us sends a misspelled word in text message, the other one comes back and goes, it's probably because you have an iPhone, or it's probably because you have an Android. Yeah. So we've got this constant battle between the two going on, and it's fun. It's all, but at the end of the day, they're, like you were saying, you kind of have to death by 1,000 cuts. It's tech science. You kind of have to try everything just to see where you fall. And as soon as you get comfortable, the next platform leapfrogs it, and you find yourself switching up. And so I think there's more users switching from Apple to Android this last year, 2023 into 2024 than ever before. It's just astonishing. But, I'm sure with what is it, iOS 15 coming out, that'll be a whole nother story. So
16, yeah.
Is it 16?
iPhone 16 with iOS 18.
18. That's right. Yeah.
I have iOS 18 now, but you can't without the AI capabilities or intelligence, right? You don't really get the full experience. But at the end of the day, it's OpenAI technology, right? Because Apple just signed a major deal with ChatGPT. And so
Siri's not that great.
Siri, listen, I yell at that lady a few times a day.
I knew you did.
That's not what I said. I told you that's not what I said.
Yep.
Android, Michael. I knew it.
And how Grok's gonna be.
What's that?
Yeah.
I wonder how Grok is going to be.
Oh my gosh. Grok is like Grok is out there, but I feel like because of who owns it,
Yeah.
it's because of Elon Musk, like it's almost become like I'm trying not to say the phrase that I want to say, but I don't know how else to say it. It's almost like the redheaded stepchild, you
Yeah.
know? Like nobody like
Yeah.
everybody's like it's there, but you don't really hear a lot about it.
It's probably going to be the first to become sentient.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. 100%, man. And so I'm interested to see what happens because
Yeah.
I mean at the end of the day, Elon Elon has the data.
Yep.
Elon has the know-how and talent
Hmm.
to make to make something as comparable. I mean, heck, I mean he was the main investor in OpenAI
Yeah.
as a nonprofit for a very long time before I don't may I. It sounds like Sam Altman was like, I don't want to be a nonprofit director.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a nonprofit director for the rest of my life, so let's turn this into a company. That's awesome, man.
I've got a so the Days in podcast, and not to, I just kind of want to bring us back real fast,
Yeah.
was designed with the idea of how can I find as true to the source information as possible, right? For some of the things, the challenges that I'm facing, and then how can I use that to hasten the projects I'm working on, or the end goal I'm working towards, etc. And so by doing that, I feel like it was a product of I have far too little time to be able to jump into Google or even some of this AI and try to, I really want to absorb as much as I can, but I don't have the time for it. I work, the 12-hour days and then come back and you've got a family and that sort of thing. And so I'm tying this back into something you said earlier, which was the size of your company, the size of impact. And if it eventually grows to a certain level, you might not have those, personal moments of being able to be on every phone call. So how do you specifically, and this is going to be great for our listeners because from a company that I know you want to be modest, but you are doing some pretty impactful things, obviously, with the name. How do you balance that personally, like yourself? What's your motivations? Because that kind of ties into what your long-term vision is for the company, and you can kind of answer that however you'd like to. But personally right now, like how are you balancing that whole thing?
So I think, how I'd like to, I have a family, 3 kids. So I definitely, want to have that work-life balance, of course. I don't
Sure.
want to just work myself into the ground. So I try to manage the growth again to keep quality amongst the people on my team, to the clients that we have at a steady state. And so I'm not looking to, I don't need to be, I mean, yeah, it could be great to be hundreds of millions of dollars richer, but it's not what drives me. I do see, always constantly love to get into new industries, meeting new clients and trying to solve their problem and seeing the look of the employees' faces when you show like, hey, this product that we just helped you create is actually making you money. And so that's why this week you asked me how my week's going, and the week is going different because I'm always thinking about how to increase my network and try to meet more people. How do I find and keep that pipeline full? It's always a challenge when running a company, especially a service-based company. You have to keep that pipeline full. You can't get complacent. And so, you have to balance out between burning out and being complacent and finding that fine line of how do you do things and spend your money and time in the most efficient way possible.
Yeah.
I could do an immersion on our own team and how we do that. And we've talked about that and we're probably going to do that soon. But, I think that's, I love, again, getting into AI, getting into different organizations. And because we have a team now that's integrating that's where I've kind of see one point of where things are going and where I want to get involved. But also fundamentally, humans are going to be humans. They're going to interact with devices the same way. The psychology is still there. The fundamental baseline that you have to know is always going to be, it'll vary as people get more and more involved with devices, but it's something where I think you have to have that foundation, and then getting into new industries is just going to be just implementing those foundations into just new devices. And, I've got a kid. He's 16 and he's asking, what should I do? What can I get into? I've got him interested in design. I've had him take, the different UX courses and things like that. And, of course I would love to see my kids get into the company and just try to do things what they love about it. Maybe they take it to, maybe somebody loves VR and just gets into all VR gaming or whatever. And somebody takes it somewhere else. I would love to do that, but I don't know. It's that's kind of things that are twirling my head now as I'm increasing in age and trying to figure things out. And there's always the industry and what's happening out there, just trying to navigate those turbulent waters and figuring out the best way to just continue to do great work for our clients.
I think, as always, I think everybody could probably agree, especially with, I've got background in management, Michael has background in building companies, and you kind of hope that it becomes self-sufficient in some way. Like you said, to micromanage is such a large task, and it's very exhausting. Talk about burnout, almost instantaneous if you're having to micromanage everything and everything has to be perfect. You talked about MVPs, and a big thing for us, starting with our app, was we were trying to perfect an MVP, which is kind of counterintuitive to what it actually even is. And so we didn't understand that, but that naturally came with burnout. And so I feel like, is there a time or place where Makoto or Impact becomes an ecosystem or organism that's so self-sufficient that you exit? And do you have other aspirations and kind of outside of UX and design and development?
Yeah, that's definitely has always been a top of mind. I mean, time is the most valuable thing that we have, and obviously more time, with your family or more time to yourself is an important thing. And so, yeah, running things efficiently is great. I've also been approached by a lot of PE and VC and as well, looking to, are you looking to cash out or, sell your company? And again,
Sure.
I'm not, it's something that is, it's in the back of my head. I'm thinking about, but it's not really there yet. I still have, I think another decade behind me before I want to even contemplate that. So we'll see. I mean, maybe something changes, but yeah, I think I'm still got a lot of energy left and still want to put time into the company.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's I think for myself personally, if I could test drive every vehicle for 3 months, and then give it back and try another one, I really find that I'm, like you were talking about earlier, just absorbing as much as possible, diving into books. Now we have access to YouTube and you can really learn just about anything. And so I find, and Michael puts it best, for the Days End Podcast, we're just doing something kind of cool right now, and we don't want to create a chore that just feels like a burden. And it kind of sounds like that's what Impact has going for it, specifically on another level, is you guys are implementing a personalized approach, a sophistication in AI in terms of integrating it where the customer and client actually needs it. And it's just this cool, it already kind of feels like this cool environment to be in. And so that's really interesting. And I'm curious, when building apps that need to perform like seamlessly across from both mobile and web platforms, what unique challenges do you encounter on that level when you're thinking about like cross-platform development, right? And integration from a UX and design perspective? If you're going between mobile and web specifically, are there any specific challenges for that process?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I understand. So when you're doing designs for mobile applications, there's definitely iOS, like you're saying, there's iOS and Android. I'm sure, I don't know if you're familiar, Michael, with Xamarin. There's some other technologies where you just code it one way and then kind of creates the iOS and the Android platform for you. That's great for kind of basic applications. So if you're doing something simple and you could just create one code base, that makes things a lot easier for you. But when you're going, say, desktop, mobile, and you're trying to, I guess, figure out what's best for the user, that's something, and I don't know if this answers your question, but it's something where when you're designing for either platform, you want to know, and you figure that out through analytics, what the user is using most.
On one end of the spectrum, it could be said that, creating Android first versus going iOS, maybe because of the exclusivity of iOS, tends to have a greater impact on the community or the user, specifically because there's so much on an Android level that is connected.
Yeah, I think you have to understand, obviously you're cutting out a big amount of potential customers by only going one platform.
Right.
So there's that. So I think if you can figure out, if you have a good development team that can develop, whatever you're trying to do that in one code base, and they can push it out to whatever, or what you do is a web application, they call it progressive web apps, where it's really just, you're not really an app that you download per se, but it's something that they can access and it's on their mobile device and it looks like a mobile application. It really depends on the features that you need. A lot of that comes down to like notifications. If you need to notify the customer, then a mobile app is probably a little bit more effective. Or if you have where you have weak Wi-Fi and you're working in the industry, we see that a lot with oil and gas, where maybe the internet connection is very weak, so they need to have an app running on their device and they have to do calculations or whatever. That's great to have a mobile app in that respect. But if you're just going on a website and you don't want to download something because you've got 50 apps on your phone already and you're just ordering a pizza, you don't need a mobile application to download per se. Maybe Chipotle, if you use it all the time, it makes sense. But, when it comes to consumers, the mobile device is usually the biggest usage, and you want to design for that. Something more complex, especially enterprise software, they generally tend to use the desktop applications. But there are things that we try to figure out to say, hey, if I'm away from my desk and I need to get notified of something, let's figure out what are the most optimal things for a user to use on a mobile device that they can use easily. So it's more digesting the information versus trying to input complex information when it comes to enterprise on a mobile device.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have a preference? Does your team have a preference
to what they would like to design?
Yeah, in terms of which platform maybe you guys would prefer to design on.
It's really just code base. I mean, they don't, it doesn't matter if it's iOS or Android. It's really, we try to be agnostic and try to design, because most of the clients will use both and download for both right away. So that's what we design for. It's real, we're so hyper focused on the user. The minutia of the interactions we'll try to design for both, but it's very close with certain things. But in general, we try to make things agnostic between both platforms.
Okay. And that's kind of what I was thinking. If you could give some insight into, somebody coming into this realm that may, because from an executive level, or an enterprise level, in some way, shape, or form, they probably have some form of insight into this, whether it's a contact or connection. But do you guys, if you're looking at it from like a first-time develop or a first-time CEO or a first-time individual that's stepping into this realm of, hey, I think I have an idea. We were kind of told from that development standpoint that, well, which one do you want? Do you want iOS or Android? They're two totally different things. And so to hear you guys kind of talk about, at the end of the day, it's all code, kind of gives us a better insight, or a new user, a new consumer, new client coming into the game for the first time, a trajectory or a path to walk down. Because obviously if you are doing both, if you're doing web, and I guess God forbid you're doing both iOS and Android, that pretty much significantly increases the price, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. That's definitely right. But again, you should really, what's most important is getting that you're solving somebody's problem with that application and testing that out. because when you start to get into that stage of the development, you should have some expertise, whether it's on your team or you consult somebody as a third party and say, hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. Can we hire you for a month to kind of manage this and make sure we're making the right decision? Or get a consulting firm that actually builds the app for you. And obviously you've got to sift through that, and there's millions of them, but you can do your due diligence and figure out maybe who's the best one for your budget. But it's really, what I see is people put so much, it's like building a logo before you actually know what your company is going to do. You put so much into that. It's got to look like this and this. Like, who gives a shit? Just put your name, font. That's it. Figure out what your problem you're trying to solve and get that. Be super diligent about what you're trying to do there first. Then let's worry about how, all the other details of how you're going to build it, because there's cheap ways to build things to test it out. Because again, you can, as you're starting to refine things, because you're never going to hit it out of the park the first time. As you start getting better and better and you're more confident, then you can start, maybe you build it on a platform that's a little bit more costly or more expensive or more scalable. But first you start off cheaper and build it on like a progressive web app where they can click through and just test it out.
What is your because you guys are very much a custom shop, say from AWS software, and that makes sense. What's your take on no code, low code, kind of
the Webflow,
yeah,
and all that? So we try to use it for our website, and it's bloated. Webflow was bloated, and the process and things to do was bloated. And because we were WordPress, then that got just too many plugins and just got bloated, hacks, whatever. Then we tried to do Webflow, and that just didn't work out. Next.js, fucking awesome. It is so fast. Yeah, so fast.
Okay.
Yeah, we love it. The content management system of WordPress, they've got that down. I mean, they've been doing it for years. It's slick. It's easy to use. So that's always nice. If you're building an e-commerce store, use Shopify. If you're just starting off business, use Wix. I mean, don't spend gobs amount of money. Don't spend $50,000 to build a custom website off the gate. But I love the Next.js. I mean, performance, everything's so quick. And I've got one of my front end developers. He helps us with the website development, and it's just super fast and it's great.
That's awesome. So are you guys using Next.js, and then you guys are using
Carousel.
Okay, and then WordPress as a front end?
No, that's just that powers it all on the front end.
Oh, nice. Okay, good. Nice.
So that's why we don't even touch WordPress or anything. It's just all Next.js, Carousel.
That's
super slick.
Fantastic.
I know people are doing, you could do Webflow again. People are building sites. You can build, that's the thing. Websites are getting so commoditized because they all look the same now. Unless you're building something really customized. And I know that those are going to cost, it's going to cost you, 15, 20K easy to start. I mean, just for us to build one of those costs that much just as a flat rate. But But if you're building something super, look at any NFT kind of website. They're got all this animation. They're very cool and stuff. And those aren't cheap. So, those are cool. And if it does not look like a template that you could get from ThemeForest or whatever, then it's going to cost you more than $50 to maintain and create it.
It's funny because I know exactly what you're talking about. You're like, seen that somewhere.
Yeah.
And you're completely right. Like Webflow, what I wish they would have done is not went so much into the template route.
Yeah.
Right. Kept it a real no code, low code type of platform. That can be utilized almost as heck, even like a headless code platform, right?
Yeah.
And that way it can just be integrated into like a stack. But they definitely went a consumer route.
Yeah.
And you see that throughout the entire code base as well. But what are your thoughts on the bubble IO of the world, right? Low code application development, no code application development, things like that.
Yeah. So I've started to do research on that. I think probably a year or 2 years ago, and it looked promising. I haven't really worked with it too much because again, when I have a software development team, so And when I talk to my front end developers and they're like, screw that no code stuff. I know how to code. I could code this much faster and much better, and it's a lot more flexible. So I have access to that, which helps me. And I know who's good, who's bad. Somebody who doesn't have access to that, it's probably easier for them to, again, you're trying to get to a certain point with whatever you're trying to build. So if it gets you to that point faster or cheaper, great. And it gets to, your desired goal, and you don't have to deal with, is the code going to work or is it going to break? I got to find a front end, and I got to find a back end developer.
Yeah.
It depends on your situation. I think, the low code and no code kind of things, if it gets your app to where you need to, that's great. And if you can scale it, great. But that's where I'm not too familiar with how easy those things scale. What's the cost of scalability and the cost of flexibility? Because again, if the barrier to entry is so low that anybody can just build an app within a prompt, you're going to get a lot of garbage out there, or you're going to get a lot of competition. So then now you're going to have to separate yourself from that competition. Mm-hmm. And that's where, and failures are made.
You're competing against the platform itself.
Yep.
And that's hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have the early adopters, you have all those people that you're competing against. And I agree with that as well. Like I've seen it. I don't think they scale well at all. I don't think, and if they do, it's massively expensive, right? Because if you have an application, right, and it's scaling beyond what the no-code application platform is doing themselves, then that's a different world, right?
Probably gets costly too when you start hitting a certain level of users too.
Oh yeah, and then you have scalability issues, right? Then you have availability issues, and then it just it becomes a major issue across platform, right? When you're doing customizations and you're able to build this and containerize a lot of the information or a lot of the data and be able to push it out in a really just much more efficient way. You can auto scale so much easier on your AWSs, your Azures, and all that of the world, and so it makes it a lot more efficient to scale, and especially in the enterprise world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, debatable in some other areas, but for sure enterprise.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, because when we took our $6,500 project and turned around and got with an actual app development company that probably had the expertise for it, and they turn around and they're like, oh yeah, we could do that for 50. And
I was about to say, add another zero to that.
Yeah, you can imagine our eyes were through the roof, because it's just, and that was kind of my goal was, how somebody getting into this, how do they avoid going down the wrong path? Maybe the same way we did from an informational perspective. That way, they can really get to. And we know it's going to cost money, but I think there was an individual, I can't remember what her name was, but she was on a podcast and she was saying, oh yeah, building an app is easy. And we were always, a year into our development team dealings, we were frustrated. We were like, what are you talking about? One, from a cost perspective, and two, from communication. And like we talked about earlier. And so I wanted to give the next Joe an opportunity to at least head in the right direction. It's going to cost. It's going to cost for quality. It has to. And, I liked what you said about the logo. You shouldn't really spend a whole bunch of time to just get something out there and get a product that might even, that for a fact is even going to have some form of relevancy. And Michael's been good at doing that for us. And so, I guess that's one of my goals for this conversation is if you had any type of specific insight to direct the next person that might be in the realm of entering into this wild world of tech and app development or website development, where should they start? Where's point A, where should they start, if you have any intake on that?
Yeah, so where they should start is really to understand what is the customer's problem they're trying to solve. And try to see what their app is going to solve and how to get that solution for that user in a very delightful and frictionless way. And that's a very broad terminology,
sure,
but it's it's something that when you're thinking about your idea, you have to, I mean, you could just write it down on a napkin and have somebody walk through the little pieces of paper and say, does this make any sense? You could be as that simple. You can explain it to somebody, but when they actually sit down and try to use it, it's a different story, because that's when the rubber hits the road and your idea now has to become something physical or digital that they have to touch and interact with. And so a lot of founders that I see, they have great ideas, but we know it's 1% idea, 99% execution. And that's where they all fail. And so they have to just understand that. I mean, ideas are just, they're everywhere, but executing on those ideas, and, somebody you may be first to market, but then somebody who has a bigger marketing budget is going to outpace you and outperform you. Even if your experiences maybe or design 25 or 50% better, there's other factors involved. So somebody getting into it really has to know that it's going to take a significant investment. That's why you see on Shark Tank, they always ask, are you in this 100% or is this your side hustle? Because if it's your side hustle, that means it's going to be just a side project. And so you have to be all in. And if you're not all in, I haven't read too many success stories where people are just halfway in and kind of get there, unless they're really good. They're genius at something and they develop something. And they're a coder, they're a designer, they're whatever. They're able to do those things. It's almost like somebody doing a DIY project at your house.
Yeah.
If you can remodel your own self, then you can do a lot more with that. But if all you are is the idea person, then you are reliant on everybody else. And so that means you're going to have to spend that money and that time. And it could be a waste of money if you don't hire right. So you're now creating more complex factors to see success. And that success is just, that's exponentially growing as you're trying to grow your product, your team, your client base, whatever it is. And so, commitment to that solution, really testing it out. And again, you can try to go cheaper and maybe you hire, and I hear it all the time, oh, let me hire a junior designer from here to design this. Sure, you can do that. But again, how competitive is your industry? Are you going to launch something that's kind of half-assed that, somebody with 2 years experience design, and then lo and behold, Uber's like, oh, we could just put in a team of 3 people on this and build something out, and you're obsolete. Or OpenAI decides, you know what, we're gonna create a GPT store, and now they wiped out how many companies out within one switch.
Yep.
So you have to understand, like, you have to go all in. You have to put a lot of time and energy in it. I mean, you can go semi in by testing out ideas, doing it with less expenses. That's why we have these kind of workshops with our clients to make sure, like, if you're going to redesign your product, you already have the customer base, you got the idea, you're already out there. So that's why we come in, we have a process that makes sure your next phase is successful. But as a startup, it's, you're starting from ground zero. So you have to know, like, to be sure, like, this is the idea, but this is how I'm thinking of executing it. Does this really solve the problems that I think it solves? And most of the time it's no.
Interesting.
Or is it a feature that, Uber or Amazon or whoever can just turn on a switch and shit, I just lost my company.
Do you feel like with the advancements of AI and technology and some of the software that's available now, do you feel like it's easier to make a successful app or more difficult to make?
It's easier to make an app. I'm not going to say successful. It's easier to make an app.
Okay. Yeah.
It's easier to do those things. Yes. It's easier the barrier to entry is lower. Just like, before 30 years ago, it was harder to start a company, to run a company, to create all this stuff. Now, Google Suite, business, everything, you have email and all this stuff, DocuSign, whatever. You can do a lot of these things faster and create companies faster. So that barrier to enter is quicker. So now you've got so many people creating companies, but now it gets to the real stuff, the real meat of it. Now, what is your product? Same with, that's where the app thing is going, or AI is going, or whatever. You're more efficiently going to create more noise out there, but it just seems like it's just more money to throw. People are going to throw at these things and just going to waste it.
Yeah, this goes back to your, previous comment as well, right? Is the people that are experts within their field utilizing AI and the tools that they have available to them will will drastically increase their efficiency versus people that are relying on it to
Mm-hmm.
give them what they need where they are deficient.
Mm.
And it's a really important distinction, right?
Yeah.
Because like one, at the end of the day, when it comes to productizing anything or a product and application, doesn't matter what it is, CPG, is across industries, right? Speed to market is a real thing,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to get there as fast as possible is a real thing. And so when you have somebody that is in a startup phase, right, like being able to get there as fast as possible is massively important. But it has to not only does it have to solve a problem, it has to provide a value, and it has to provide almost like a recurring value as well, for it to be able to sustain over time. Or else you're chasing the next thing. You're always chasing, right? And we see that all the time within businesses, right? Because most startups, fail within the first 5 years, and most don't ever hit on 1 million within 10 years. And so being able to like see the trajectory up front, going, okay, like, do I have a recurring problem that makes sense? Build a product around that provides value and solve the problem. That's a beautiful avenue to go down, right? Like if it's foreseeable and you're like, yes, got it. Like this is the avenue to go, and you have a differentiator, right? You have to have that differentiator that just goes, slightly different than the rest, right? Like what I love about what you guys are doing at Impact is you guys have a differentiator, right? The differentiator is being able to embed yourselves into the businesses and understand what it looks like from top down. And that differentiator is huge compared to some of these other customers that want to churn and burn.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
That's all they want to do. These development teams, these offshore development teams, or heck, even onshore development teams. Some guy in California that's posting on TikTok, is outsourcing all of the work out in like India. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you have that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this. Let me create a facade at the front, but really the work is all the way out here,
Yep.
and that creates a big disconnect as well, because the individual that you're interfacing with is just not in it. So differentiation of the product differentiation is huge. Or even service, right? It doesn't have to be product, it can be service as
Yep.
well. Like a service differentiator, a product differentiator, whatever it may be. Like it has to be that much different than the rest to be able to stand out, especially in today's market because everything is saturated. Everything is, right? And that comes back to that like kind of saying of you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, you can have it good,
Yep.
right? You can have it fast and
Use that
cheap,
all the
it's not gonna
time.
be good. But if it's not good and fast, it's not going to be cheap,
Yep.
right? You can't
Exactly.
have all three.
Yep. And people think they can get all three all the time.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
right. And we know those are the ones that
Yep.
are failing in the first
Yeah,
18
they crash and burn quick.
crash and burn
Yep.
super quick because they're like, why can't I have? They want their cake and eating it too. And
Yep.
I don't know how many times you've seen it, right?
Yep.
I don't know how many times I've heard of I have the next big idea, and I'm like, I don't know if you do.
He says it to me all the time. He texts me, nah, I don't know about that one. But I was curious because how often do you see, I kind of go back in reference to, especially with us trying to create some form of a connection app. Think about one of the founders of Tinder, when he initially started the project, he was looking to solve the issue of misconnections. And that's not really what Tinder is anymore, right? And so how often do you see somebody approach Impact with an idea? Michael's talking about differentiators, and you guys go, maybe you should tilt this direction versus the trajectory that you guys were on. And how, because I know nobody likes to see their baby die, right? Their project die, their dream, their idea. It's a difficult thing, but it's necessary, especially within the tech world, to be relevant. How often do you guys see that? How often do you guys see a product shift?
All the time. No matter if it's an existing product or something, even embedded with the organization. If they're trying to think of something, they have an idea, they have product owners, SMEs, whatever, and they're like, oh, this is what we think. It changes. And I don't know how many times I've seen startups approach me like, oh, we'll give you sweat equity and all this stuff. I'm like, first of all, no, I don't want 100% of zero. Because I know the odds of that winning. I'd rather play craps in Vegas with those odds. But, it does. And I've been part of startups and, most of them have gone nowhere. I mean, there's a couple that have got very small, minor, equity and the leadership does play a part, but they have to constantly pivot because it's just their original idea is either going to be, if it's an idea that's good, it's going to be quickly saturated in a very short period of time by people who have far more financial backing and expertise because they're ready to grow fast. And these people who are very conservative with their spending don't realize that, if as soon as you got somebody with the same idea on your heels, and you're not keeping up with that, you're going to lose any type of market share that you thought you had as far as first market advantage. So it's just, there's a lot of ideas that come at me, and from a user experience standpoint, I just put on that hat and just think about it. Usually they try to boil the ocean and try to be everything all at once type of app, or they're super niche, and I'm like, oh, that's just a switch. I just, Google puts a team on there of 3 people, you're done.
It's over. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. I feel like I wish we had that opportunity to know some of your expertise and knowledge on the fact before we went down that road. But, at the same time, knowledge is everything, and learning and growing is so important. So it sounds like Impact's at that pivotal point of continuing to grow, especially in your in the fast tracking growth that you guys have had over the last 3 years. That there's probably no stop in sight, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, next thing is I've been trying to think about products, and of course, we've built hundreds of them, and same thing, we're trying to. Is there a product that we can do? Because service is hard. It's not easy. It is a grind. And so having a product is a different grind, but, we've built so many of them. I'm like, we know how to do this. Let's build it ourselves. But it's tough. I mean, everything from an AI product, but I'm like, again, there's just, as soon as you have an idea, there's going to be 50 companies out there just on your heels doing it. So we want to try to solve what is hard to do, has a high barrier to entry, or takes a lot of effort, and try to do it, because everything else is just, it's just a race then. And it's not something that I'm willing to risk at this point. Maybe if I was, 20 years younger and had, a few million in the bank doing nothing, I'd be doing that.
Yeah.
But
well, we're excited to see the continual growth and follow along on you guys' journey. I mean, we're going to continue to do that. And I really want to plug that podcast. I'm probably going to dive into it tomorrow myself. And so I'd love to give you that opportunity to kind of throw that out there where the listeners can go and listen to some of the cool stuff you guys are doing and technical challenges that you guys are overcoming.
Yeah, definitely. We have our podcast. It's called Make an Impact. The user experience is what we call it. And we have, we have probably about a dozen or so episodes up, mostly on AI, and my integration team on there. We talk about latest news and just things and problems that we see with different clients and things that we've integrated. And just, I've also got my UX team, design team that I interview one-on-one, so people get to see who they are and have that personal connection of, hey, there's actual people here with some great experience and that are behind your products and the services we provide. And, we have different strategies and things that we're going to get into more. So I've got a few more coming up soon. So just tune in there and be happy to, answer any questions that people have, leave any kind of comments or whatever. And it's been a pleasure to have been on your guys' podcast as well. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah,
definitely.
Is that streaming on pretty much every platform available?
Yes, pretty much every platform.
Awesome. Makoto, thank you for your time, sir.
Great. Thanks, Will, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.